I should have never taken the job. That's the first thing I think about whenever I look back on those weeks. Everyone told me the pay wasn't worth it, but I thought they were just exaggerating. A climb here, a climb there, how hard could it be? I was wrong. There are things up there, high above the tree line, that we aren't meant to see. And if I could go back, if I could rewind time, I'd have stayed broke, hungry, and safe on the ground. I took the job because I needed money, simple as that. I'd been laid off from the factory where I'd spent the last 3 years, and the bills were piling up fast. Rent, utilities, the debt I'd been dragging like a chain for half a decade. When you're drowning, you don't care what kind of rope someone throws you. All you think about is grabbing on. The cell tower company was that rope. The ad almost sounded too good to be true. High pay for hard work. Travel provided. No experience necessary. Most people would scroll right past an ad like that. I didn't. I clicked, filled out the form, and by the end of the week, I was on the phone with a recruiter. He warned me the work was dangerous, climbing 200, sometimes 300 feet, harnessed to a skeleton of steel, with the wind pushing against you. But danger didn't scare me. Being broke did. The first time I saw one of the towers up close, I froze. Photographs don't do them justice. They rise out of the ground like something alien, lattice of metal stabbing straight into the sky. The closer you get, the more unnatural they feel. Too tall, too thin. They don't look like they should stay standing, and yet they do, humming faintly, almost like they're breathing. I told myself I was imagining it. Just nerves before my first climb. The crew I joined wasn't exactly welcoming, but they weren't hostile either. They just seemed tired. The kind of tired that goes deeper than a lack of sleep. My lead, a guy named Harris, shook my hand and told me I'd get used to it. When I asked what he meant, he just gave me a long look and walked away. That first night in the motel we shared, I noticed something odd. Harris and the others kept their curtains shut tight, even though the rooms faced an empty stretch of forest. When I cracked mine open to let in some air, Harris knocked on my door 10 minutes later. He didn't say much, just told me to keep them closed. His tone wasn't friendly. It wasn't even annoyed. It was urgent. I lay awake that night, staring at the glowing red light on the horizon where the nearest tower pulsed in the dark. The light blinked steadily, like a heartbeat. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching from up there, perched higher than the trees, looking down at me as I tried to sleep. The next morning, I shrugged it off as nerves again. But even during the safety briefing, when the company rep ran through the usual checklist of harnesses, carabiners, and fall protocols, I noticed the crew shifting uncomfortably. Not at the mention of falls, not at the mention of electrocution hazards, but when the rep reminded us, always follow site-specific rules. His eyes lingered on me when he said it, like he was warning me personally. I thought the rules would be about safety, but I was wrong. The rules weren't about the towers themselves. They were about something else. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just working a dangerous job. I was stepping into a place where danger was the least of my problems. The company van took us miles past the last gas station, then another hour beyond the last town. The further we went, the emptier the world became. The road narrowed until it was little more than a strip of cracked asphalt splitting through endless trees. No billboards, no traffic, just silence, broken only by the hum of the tires and the occasional cough from the driver. When the van finally stopped, we were in a clearing surrounded by forest that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. That's when I saw the tower we'd be working on. It was taller than I expected, so tall I had to tilt my head all the way back to see the blinking light at the very top. From the ground, the tower looked like it shouldn't exist, like a needle that had been driven straight into the sky by some unseen hand. The air around felt different, heavier. I only realized how quiet it was when I noticed that the forest wasn't making a sound. No bird song, no buzzing insects, not even the rustle of wind in the leaves. The silence pressed in on me, and when I looked at the other crew members, I noticed none of them were looking at the tower directly. Their eyes slid past it, as if it hurt to keep their gaze there too long. Harris, my lead, finally broke the silence. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Before anyone touches that ladder, we go over the rules." He gathered us near the base of the tower. The others stood in a loose half-circle, their faces grim, waiting. I thought he meant the safety rules, the kind you find in training manuals about tee-off points and lanyards. But the way he looked at me told me this wasn't OSHA he was about to quote. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket. It was weathered, edges soft from being read too many times. He held it like scripture. "These rules aren't company policy," Harris said. "They're what keep you alive out here. You follow them exactly, no exceptions. Anyone who breaks them doesn't last long. And before you ask, no, I'm not joking." I gave a nervous laugh, but no one else did. They just kept staring at him, their silence heavy. My throat tightened. Harris unfolded the paper. He didn't need to read it. I could tell he knew every line by heart. Still, he recited them slowly, as though speaking them aloud kept them in place. Rule 1, never look down after sunset. Once the sun's gone, your eyes will play tricks on you. Doesn't matter how good your night vision is. If you look down, you might see things that aren't there. And if they see you looking back, it's already too late. Rule 2, if you hear a second voice on the radio, do not answer. The radios will crackle sometimes. Static, feedback, normal stuff. But if you hear something that sounds like another climber, don't respond. No matter what they say, it's not one of us. Rule 3, do not climb past the last painted section. He tapped the tower with his knuckle. About 2/3 up, the metal changed from red to a dull silver. You'll be tempted to keep going, especially if you're assigned to beacon maintenance. Don't. Above that line, things change. Nobody who's gone higher has come back down. The same. Rule 4, if you see someone above you on the tower who shouldn't be there, climb down immediately. There are times you'll swear someone's already up there. Maybe you'll even recognize the harness, the helmet. Don't wait to find out. Get off the tower. Rule 5, never stare at the beacon light longer than 10 seconds. It's not just for planes. That light can draw you in if you're not careful. Stare too long, and you won't be able to look away. And if you can't look away, you won't come down. Rule 6, keep your curtains closed at the motel every night. You might see shapes outside the glass. You might hear tapping. Don't open them. Don't look. Just keep them shut tight until morning. Rule 7, if your harness feels like it's being tugged when there's no wind, do not look up. Just keep climbing. Looking will only make it worse. He folded the paper again and slid it back into his pocket. No one spoke. The other climbers shifted uncomfortably, their boots grinding the dirt. They didn't argue, didn't roll their eyes, didn't laugh. They accepted every word like it was law. I raised my hand halfway, then dropped it. "Come on," I said, forcing a smile. "You can't be serious. This is just to freak out the new guy, right?" Harris's eyes met mine. His expression didn't change. "You think I'm joking? Ask the ones who didn't listen." "Oh, wait, you can't." The silence that followed was worse than his words. I wanted to argue, to say it was ridiculous, just superstition to scare rookies. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized nobody believed it was a joke. Their faces were pale, tense, as if repeating those rules had dragged up memories they'd rather forget. Something inside me shifted then. I didn't know whether to laugh or run, but I understood one thing. This job was not what I thought it was. The tower loomed behind us, its beacon pulsing like a slow heartbeat, and for the first time, I felt the urge to look away. The first real climb started 2 days later. By then, I'd gotten used to the morning safety checks, the equipment inspections. the way everyone avoided small talk when we parked at the base of the tower. It was strange. For a crew that spent hours dangling hundreds of feet in the air together, they didn't act like a team. They acted like survivors. Harris clipped my harness to the safety line himself. "Remember what I told you," he said quietly, almost like a prayer. "Don't look down after sunset." I nodded, but at the time I didn't take it seriously. The climb itself was harder than I expected. My arms burned after just 50 feet. The rungs of the ladder were cold and slick, vibrating faintly with the hum of the electronics mounted along the structure. Every 20 feet, I clipped my lanyard into a new section of the safety cable, the carabiner clicking with a sound that echoed far louder than it should have. By the time I reached the first platform, the trees below had already blurred into a dark carpet. The van, the clearing, even the road we came in on, all of it was swallowed up by the distance. From that height, I could almost convince myself the world had vanished, leaving just me and the tower. The work itself wasn't complicated: bolts, replacing worn cable brackets, but the higher we climbed, the stranger the air felt. Thin, colder than it should have been for the season. By late afternoon, the sun dipped low, and the beacon light at the top of the tower began its steady pulse, red, black, like a heartbeat, against the sky. I should have stopped then, but I wanted to prove myself. The crew was spread out along the structure. Harris was above me, another climber somewhere below. The light was fading fast. By the time I clipped into the next rung, the forest beneath had become nothing more than shadow. That's when I made the mistake. Curiosity got the better of me. I knew the rule. Harris had drilled it into me. But rules are made to be tested, right? I told myself I just wanted to see how far up I was. Just one look. I glanced down. For a second, nothing happened. Just blackness below, the faint outline of the clearing, the van like a toy car. My stomach twisted, but I felt a thrill too. I'd broken the rule, and nothing happened. Then I noticed movement. At first, I thought it was one of the crew. A figure on the ladder, maybe 50 feet below, climbing steadily upward. But the longer I stared, the less sense it made. The figure moved too quickly, scaling the rungs with unnatural ease. The limbs bent wrong, angles too sharp. Its helmet, if it even was a helmet, didn't catch the fading light the way it should have. It looked slick, like wet stone. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. But when I looked again, the figure had climbed closer. The distance between us was shrinking fast, and then it tilted its head up. Even from that height, I could tell it saw me. I don't know how, but I felt its gaze lock onto mine, cold and heavy, like a hook lodged under my ribs. My hands went numb on the ladder. For one terrible second, I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. A voice crackled in my radio. Not Harris. Not anyone I recognized. Just a whisper, too low to make out words. The figure froze then, clinging to the tower like an insect. The whisper grew louder, almost inside my head. I wanted to answer. I wanted to look down again, to see if it was still there. But Harris's voice cut through, sharp and furious. "Keep climbing. Don't stop. Don't look." I snapped out of it, forcing myself upward. Muscles screaming, lungs burning. I didn't look down again, not until my boots touched solid ground an hour later. When I unhooked my harness, Harris grabbed me by the shoulder. His eyes searched mine. "You looked, didn't you?" I couldn't bring myself to answer. The silence between us said enough. He let go, shaking his head. "Don't do it again. Next time, you won't come down." That night, in the motel, I closed my curtains without being told, and still, when I shut my eyes, all I could see was that figure climbing toward me, head tilted back, waiting for me to look again. The next morning, nobody mentioned what had happened the night before. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe Harris hadn't told them. Either way, I kept my mouth shut. But I noticed the way Harris kept glancing at me, his jaw tight, like he was waiting for me to slip again. We drove back out to the tower in silence. The forest looked the same, dark, endless, but it felt different now. The clearing seemed smaller, the air heavier. As we parked, I caught myself staring at the blinking beacon at the top. 10 seconds, maybe more. I had to force myself to look away. The climb was harder that day, not because of the work, but because of the weight pressing on my chest. Every rung I grabbed felt colder. Every gust of wind felt sharper. And through it all, I could feel Harris watching me from a platform above, making sure I followed the rules. By mid-afternoon, clouds rolled in. The light dimmed, shadows stretching long across the forest floor. I was halfway up when my radio hissed. At first it was just static, the kind that always rattles in your ear when the signal gets weak. I almost ignored it. Then a voice cut through. "Hey, you there?" I froze, one hand on the ladder. The voice was faint, buried in static, but I knew what this meant. Rule 2. Harris's warning echoed in my mind. If you hear a second voice on the radio, do not answer. I waited, hoping it would fade. The wind rattled the metal, my harness creaked. "Come on," the voice whispered. "It's me, Harris. You copy?" My stomach nodded. Harris was above me. I could see him moving, his safety line taut against the steel. But the voice in the radio sounded exactly like him. Same rhythm, same clipped tone. My thumb hovered over the talk button. I told myself not to press it, that others had been clear. Never respond. But the voice came again, stronger this time. "Answer me. I need you to clip into the left line. Right now, you're not safe where you are." I glanced at my harness. Both carabiners were locked. Perfectly. Fine. Still, the words burrowed under my skin. How did it know where I was? How did it know what I was thinking? "Don't make me ask again," the voice snapped, sharper now. "Do it." My pulse hammered. Against every warning, against the knot of dread twisting in my chest, I pressed the button. "Copy," I said quietly. "This is me. I hear you." The response came instantly. Too fast. "Good, good. You're listening now." The voice didn't sound like Harris anymore. The words were stretched, distorted, like they were being spoken through water. And then it said something that froze me completely. "You shouldn't have looked down last night." I went rigid, my breath catching. No one had told it that. No one could have. "Don't worry," the voice continued, low and eager. "We're already climbing up to meet you." The static roared, swallowing the words, but I didn't need to hear the rest. My hand shook as I ripped the headset away from my ear. For the rest of the climb, I swore I could hear faint breathing through the tiny speaker, slow and patient, matching my every move. When we finally reached the ground, I unclipped, faster than I ever had before. My legs wobbled as they touched dirt. I wanted to rip the radio off my harness and hurl it into the trees, but I didn't. I just stood there, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Harris approached me. He didn't say a word at first. He just looked at the radio still clipped to my vest. His face was pale. "You answered it, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. I thought it was you." His jaw clenched. He leaned closer, his voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "Next time it talks to you, don't give it your name." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew the rules weren't superstition. They were the only thing keeping us from something I couldn't even understand. That night, when I lay awake in the motel, the radio sat on the nightstand beside me, and I swear, just before sleep finally dragged me under, I heard faint breathing in the dark. After the radio incident, things shifted. The crew spoke even less than before, which I didn't think was possible. Harris hardly looked at me. When he did, it wasn't anger I saw in his eyes, it was worry, like I was carrying a disease he didn't want to catch. We worked in silence, climbed in silence, drove back to the motel in silence. The only sound was the hum of the towers we left behind. their red lights pulsing in the distance like watchful eyes. That silence weighed on me at night. Lying in my narrow bed, curtains drawn tight, I couldn't shake the sound of breathing that had lingered in my radio. It hadn't stopped, not really. It was inside me now, echoing in my head whenever the motel room went quiet. On the fourth night, while the others were still outside smoking, I noticed Harris had left his duffel bag under the bed in our shared room. Normally he kept it locked, always within reach, but that night he had unzipped it fully shut. I don't know what made me do it. Curiosity, maybe, or desperation. I needed to know what was going on, because nobody was going to tell me. I pulled the bag out and opened it. Beneath the spare gloves and harness clips was a thick binder, its cover worn smooth, the company logo barely visible anymore. Inside were laminated pages, incident reports, checklists, memos. At first, it looked routine. Then I saw the names, dozens of them, each followed by the word missing. The dates stretched back years. Some were recent, others decades old. Every few pages, the reports became less formal, more frantic. Notes scrawled in pen along the margins. He answered it. Saw something below. Couldn't stop staring at the light. My stomach turned. I flipped deeper until I found a section that wasn't typed but handwritten. Shaky letters on lined notebook paper, slipped between the official reports. It was a journal. The first entry was short. Day 3. They gave me the rules. Thought it was a joke. It isn't. The next few pages described climbs, near misses, and long nights in the same motel we stayed in now. Then I found one that made me go cold. Day 11. I heard a voice on the radio. It said my name. Sounded like my brother. I answered. I shouldn't have. I think it knows me now. Last night, something tapped on the glass. I almost opened the curtain. Almost. The others won't talk to me anymore. I read faster, heart pounding. The final entry was little more than a scrawl. It's on the tower with me. I can't climb down. Don't look for me. There were no more pages. I shoved the journal back into the binder and zipped the duffel just as Harris's footsteps echoed in the hall. He entered, gave me a long look, then set his pack on the chair without a word. But I could tell by the tightness in his jaw that he knew I'd seen something. The next day at the worksite, I couldn't focus. Every bolt I checked, every rung I grabbed, my mind replayed those entries. When the wind whistled through the steel, I swore I heard whispers tucked inside it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The others snored through the walls, but my head was buzzing. I needed more answers. The motel office had a dusty cabinet behind the desk where they stored old VHS tapes. Security footage. Most were unlabeled. When the clerk ducked into the back room, I slipped one into my jacket. In my room, I pushed the tape into the player beneath the old TV. The screen flickered, grainy black and white. A tower, smaller than the one we were on now, but familiar enough. 2 climbers were halfway up, tiny figures moving against the sky. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Just the steady sway of the camera, the hum of wind. Then the picture warped. The tape hissed. A shadow flickered between the climbers. I leaned closer, squinting. The shadow was moving too fast. It darted up the rungs in jerks, vanishing, reappearing higher each time. The climber below froze. His head tilted, like he'd just heard something on the radio. The footage cut to static for a second, then returned. The lower climber was gone. The other one screamed silent through the tape, but his mouth stretched wide. He scrambled down, but something blurred behind him, almost humanoid, almost insect-like. Following the screen flickered again, lines ripping across the picture. When it cleared, the tower was empty. Both men were gone. The tape ended with the camera still rolling on the vacant structure, beacon pulsing steadily in the night. I ejected the cassette, my hands shaking. My skin crawled, my chest tight. There was no way this was just one tower. The binder had too many names. The tape proved it. Whatever this was, it wasn't local. It wasn't random. It was everywhere. Every tower, every blinking light that dotted the night horizon could be another hunting ground. And the company knew. They weren't hiding the rules because they were superstitious. They were hiding them because if word got out, no one would ever take the job. I sat there for a long time, staring at the curtains, waiting for the inevitable tapping on the glass, wondering how many voices were waiting to speak my name. And for the first time since I'd taken the job, I realized I didn't just want to quit. I wanted to run, far away, as fast as I could. But the beacon outside pulsed steadily, red and patient, like it knew I wasn't going anywhere. The job that night was different. Normally we started climbs early, making sure we were done before sunset. But the company had called in a rush order, a beacon malfunction at a neighboring tower. Planes relied on those lights, they said. It couldn't wait. Harris argued over the radio, his voice sharp, angrier than I'd ever heard it. You don't send men up after dark. Not here, not ever. But whoever was on the other end didn't budge. You want to keep your contract. You climb. By the time we pulled into the clearing, the sun was already bleeding into the tree line, shadows stretching long and thin across the ground. Harris's jaw was tight, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. He didn't look at me when he said, "Stay close. Do exactly as I say, and if anything feels wrong, you climb down. Don't argue." I wanted to protest, to tell him I wasn't ready for this, not after what I'd seen in his binder, not after the voice on the radio, but there was no room for argument. The tower loomed over us, its beacon already flashing against the dim sky like a slow, steady heartbeat. We clipped in and started climbing. The first 100 feet were routine, if climbing into the sky on a skeleton of steel can ever be routine. My muscles strained, my harness creaked, the wind tugged at my clothes. But as the light faded, something changed. The air grew still, naturally still. No wind, no sound of insects, nothing. Just silence pressing in, broken only by the groan of the tower. And the tower was humming again, louder this time. The vibration traveled through the steel into my gloves, up my arms, into my chest. It didn't feel mechanical. It felt alive. I forced myself upward, rung by rung, trying to match Harris's pace above me. The beacon pulsed steadily against the dark, painting the tower in red flashes. For a moment, the climb almost felt endless, like I wasn't moving at all, just caught in a loop, higher and higher, with no ground below and no top above. Then I noticed it, movement. At first, I thought it was Harris, higher on the ladder, shifting into position. But Harris was only a few yards above me, clipped onto a platform, working on a junction box. The movement I saw was farther up, much farther. A figure clinging to the steel above the painted section, where no one was supposed to go. Rule 4 came back to me instantly. If you see someone above you on the tower who shouldn't be there, climb down immediately. My breath caught in my throat. The figure didn't move like a climber. Its limbs bent at angles that didn't make sense. One moment it seemed stretched, elongated. The next it seemed compact, curled tight against the steel. Each flash of the beacon showed it in a slightly different position, closer than before, like it was jerking toward me in bursts I couldn't see happening. The radio on my vest crackled. "Don't stop." Harris's voice cut through, but underneath it, almost layered into the static, another voice echoed, my own name. It said my name, slowly, like it was savoring it. I froze. My glove slipped against the rung, and for a terrifying second, my boot missed the next step. The harness caught me, jerking me back against the ladder, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. The radio hissed again, and this time, it wasn't Harris. It was a chorus, multiple voices, overlapping, whispering, calling, all of them saying my name. Some sounded like men, some like women, some like children, and some didn't sound human at all. I couldn't help myself. I looked up. The figure was closer now, only a dozen feet above. It was clinging upside down, its body contorted, head tilted back toward me. For one horrible second, the beacon flashed across its face. It was blurred, not in the way a camera loses focus, but like its features couldn't hold together. They shifted as I stared, sometimes a man's face, sometimes Harris's, sometimes something I didn't recognize at all. Its mouth opened too wide, as though it wanted to speak, but all that came through my radio was static. Then it moved, fast. I screamed and scrambled upward, my body moving before my brain could. The figure darted down the rungs with impossible speed, jerky but efficient, closing the distance between us in seconds. My hands burned against the steel, my chest heaving as I fought to climb faster. "Get down," Harris shouted above me, his voice sharp with fear, but I couldn't. The thing was below me now, and climbing down meant heading straight into it. The tower groaned, shaking as though something massive was crawling across it. My harness tugged hard, though there was no wind. My carabiner squealed against the safety line like it was being pulled upward. The figure lunged. I nearly lost my grip, my boot slipping, my stomach lurching as I swung out into open air. For one nightmarish second, I was hanging by the harness, alone, the ladder rungs inches from my fingertips. Below me, the thing clung to the steel, its head twisted at an impossible angle, watching me swing. It didn't climb higher. It just stared. The radio hissed one last time, a single voice this time. My own voice. "Don't look down." Hands shaking, I scrambled back onto the rungs, forcing myself downward. Harris's voice was barking orders from somewhere above, but I couldn't hear the words anymore. All I could hear was my own ragged breath and the slow, patient hum of the tower. When my boots finally hit the dirt, my legs gave out. I ripped off the harness and stumbled back, craning my neck upward. Harris climbed down minutes later, pale and trembling, but safe. The tower stood silently above us, its beacon pulsing steady and calm. But halfway up, just above the painted section, the figure still clung to the steel. It wasn't moving, it was waiting. After the encounter on the tower, everything felt different. I couldn't shake the image of that figure clinging above the painted section. The way it moved too fast, too fluid, like it didn't belong in the world of men. My hands trembled for hours, even after I'd clawed into the motel bed and pulled the blankets over my head. Harris was quiet too, but not quiet in the way he had been before, wary and cautious. This was a different quiet. His silence felt deliberate, heavy with things left unsaid. He didn't meet my eyes when I spoke, and sometimes I could swear he was watching me through the corner of his gaze, gauging my reactions, measuring my fear. I started noticing things that didn't add up. The binder I'd rifled through, missing entries torn out cleanly, as if someone had scrubbed certain names from the record. Harris handled the radios differently now. He adjusted channels, whispered into the microphone when he thought I wasn't looking. Sometimes he'd step outside and make calls I couldn't overhear. The unease that had been building since day one now had a name. Suspicion. One night, I confronted him. We were at the base of the tower, preparing for another climb. The forest was still, the sky a dull gray. I could see the faint pulse of the beacon in the distance. "Harris," I said, voice low, "why didn't you tell me the full story? About the binder, the missing crews, the figure on the tower?" He didn't answer at first, just stared at the ladder ahead of us. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost too calm. "I told you what you needed to know. The rest doesn't help anyone." "Doesn't help anyone?" I echoed. "You mean it keeps people alive, or keeps the company alive? How many people have disappeared because you didn't tell them?" He shifted, finally meeting my eyes. There was no fear there, only calculation. "Look, kid, you think I haven't done things to survive. Everyone here has a role. Some of us make choices you wouldn't understand. I've kept people alive by letting others fall. It's ugly, but it works. You follow the rules or you don't. That's it. I wanted to scream. Betrayal burned like acid in my chest. This mentor, the person who had drilled the rules into me, was complicit. He wasn't just a survivor. He was an architect of our fear, guiding rookies up these towers like lambs to slaughter, knowing exactly what would happen if we slipped. Do? You send people up there knowing what's waiting? I asked, voice shaking. He hesitated, then nodded almost imperceptibly. Sometimes, it's a choice. Survival isn't about everyone making it. It's about me making it. I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to strike him, to run, to curse him. But before I could act, a sudden gust of wind rippled through the clearing. The tower groaned like a living thing, and the red beacon pulsed faster, brighter, as though it had sensed something. Harris stiffened. His calm evaporated, replaced by pure, raw fear. "Move," he shouted. Before I could ask what he meant, the shadow darted from above the painted section, descending with impossible speed. Harris didn't have time to react. He vanished into the glare of the beacon for a second, and when the red light blinked again, he was gone. I froze, heart hammering. The tower stood silent, ominous, as if nothing had happened. Yet I could still feel the weight of Harris's absence pressing down on me. The wind shifted, and a faint static hissed in my radio. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The betrayal stung even more now. Harris hadn't just hidden the truth. He deliberately put people in harm's way. And now, just like those before him, he had vanished into the machinery of the tower, leaving me alone. I was suddenly more aware than ever of my own fragility. Every step I took on the ground felt tentative. Every glance at the tower above made my stomach twist. I realized then that the real horror wasn't just the thing that lived on the tower, or the voices on the radio. The real horror was knowing that the person who taught you how to survive could also be the person most likely to betray you. And with Harris gone, I was truly alone. The tower pulsed its red light at me, patient, steady, like a heartbeat that had slowed just enough to watch me. I understood now. I had no allies, no safety nets, only the rules, and the knowledge that breaking them or trusting the wrong person could mean the end. I went back to the motel that night, hands shaking, head buzzing. I stared at the binder, the tapes, the notes. All of it pointed to the same truth. Some people survived by deceiving others. Some were complicit in the very horrors they feared. And the higher you climbed, the less chance you had to escape either. Harris had been both a guide and a trap. I didn't know if I would see him again, and even if I did, would he be the man I trusted, or something else entirely? Harris was gone, just gone. The tower loomed behind me, red beacon pulsing steadily in the night, and for the first time, I realized I was completely alone. The rest of the crew had either fled to the vans, or were frozen somewhere on the lower rungs, unwilling to climb or descend. Their silence was deafening. I took a shaky breath and tried to collect my thoughts. I needed a plan. I couldn't stay on the ground. The figure, or whatever it was, wasn't going away. I could feel it in the vibration of the steel, in the way the shadows around the base of the tower shifted when I turned my head. Every time I glanced up, the beacon seemed to blink slower, deliberate, like it was studying me. The first instinct was to run, to leave everything behind and report the company. But even that seemed impossible. The forest was dense, and the roads disappeared into blackness. Every step toward the van felt heavier, like gravity itself was warning me against moving. Then I heard it, a faint scrape of metal against metal, too rhythmic, too precise to be wind. I froze. My hands gripped my harness strap. The figure was moving, closer, fast. I had three options: climb higher, fix the malfunction at the top, and risk running directly into it. I could try to outrun it and escape to the forest. Or I could break one of the rules, gamble on a temporary loophole, and hope it kept me alive. Every choice terrified me. The first would put me in direct sight of the thing. The second, I had no idea how long I could last in the dark woods alone. The third, breaking a rule had already brought consequences. And yet, staying put was impossible. My pulse thundered in my ears as I weighed them. The wind shifted again, metal groaning, and I realized the figure was closer than I thought, just above the painted section. It moved unnaturally, limber and quick, swaying like it didn't have bones. Its face flickered in the red light, sometimes human, sometimes something else entirely. I made my decision. I would break the rule I had been terrified of since day one. I would look down, but only just enough to gauge the terrain, to find my escape route. I told myself it was calculated, precise, one glance, one decision, and I'd climb or run. I forced my gaze down. Shadows stretched impossibly far, and in one movement too fluid for human speed, the figure's shape jerked below me. My stomach dropped. It had already noticed me. My hands trembled on the rungs, cold sweat soaking through my gloves. My harness tugged against me, as if warning me, but I didn't look away. A sudden creak of steel above made me snap my head up. Another figure, blurred, distorted, was descending from the top of the tower. My heart pounded. The two of them were closing in. I forced myself to move, rung by rung, foot over foot, climbing, descending, ignoring the screaming in my head. Each movement felt like wading through water, gravity doubled, air heavy. I glanced down against enough to make sure the forest could offer cover, and planned my sprint to the van. Then it struck, not physically, but the world shifted. The wind vanished. Silence pressed in. My harness pulled as if something unseen had grabbed it. I nearly lost my balance, clutching the ladder with both hands. A whisper hissed in my ear, indistinguishable, just enough to make my blood run cold. I didn't stop. I didn't argue. I didn't even breathe fully. My whole being focused on one thing, moving by some miracle. I scrambled to the base, feet hitting dirt before the harness could pull me further into that frozen moment. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I ran into the trees, into the dark. Behind me, the red light blinked steadily, impossibly calm, and I could swear the shadows among the trunks were following, shifting, waiting. The forest swallowed my footsteps, but not my fear. I collapsed behind a fallen log, chest heaving, trying to slow my pulse. I had survived barely, but the cost was clear. I had broken a rule. I had stared down, and now, whatever had been watching, whatever had been stalking me, knew exactly where I was. The thought pressed in on me harder than exhaustion or pain. Survival was temporary. The rules weren't suggestions, they were lifelines, and every choice I made from here on out would be the difference between coming back and disappearing into the same silent, blinking void that had claimed Harris. I didn't know if I could trust anyone anymore. Not the crew, not the company, not even the rules themselves. All I knew was I had to keep moving, or I wouldn't get the chance to make the next decision. I thought I'd escaped. I ran through the forest for what felt like hours, branches scratching my face, roots tripping me, the red glow of the tower fading behind me. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't dare stop. Finally, I reached the road. The van was still there, empty, keys in the ignition as if waiting. I slid inside, hands trembling on the wheel. For a moment, I imagined driving straight into the night, leaving everything behind, leaving the towers, the rules, the whispering voices, leaving the thing that watched from above. But then I saw it in the rearview mirror. The red beacon pulsed, far off in the distance, steady and calm, and closer, much closer than it should have been. A shadow, impossible in speed and scale, clinging to a tree, then leaping from trunk to trunk, following me. My stomach churned. My hands froze on the wheel. I tried the ignition. Nothing. Dead. The forest was silent, except for the faint hiss of my own radio, sitting on the passenger seat. Static at first, then a whisper. My name. Slow, deliberate, patient. I wanted to throw it out the window, smash it, anything. But curiosity, or maybe terror, kept my fingers from moving. Then the thought hit me. The binder, the logs, Harris, the countless names, every tower, every blinking light. It wasn't just here, it never was. The rules didn't protect you from one tower. They protected you from all of them. And every choice, every glance, every decision looked down, answer, climb was being watched. Every violation added up. Every lapse was logged. Every failure was claimed. I turned back toward the trees, toward the tower, hoping against hope for some mercy. But the darkness was empty. The tower seemed farther than before, smaller, distant, but its red beacon still pulsed in the same rhythm, like a heartbeat that had followed me. The forest behind me was alive with movement. Shadows darted between trunks, too fast to track. Faint whispers echoed my own thoughts. The rules were clear now, but the endgame wasn't. Survival was temporary. Escape was an illusion. I had broken a rule to survive, and still it had followed. Still, it watched. Still, it waited. I started the van. It roared to life, tires crunching gravel, engine whining. I sped down the road, weaving through darkness. But no matter how far I drove, the blinking red light appeared again on the horizon. Steady, patient, watching, and I understood. It doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter what I do. I might escape this tower. I might live to tell the tale. But it will always find me, or the next tower will, or the next, or the next. I glanced at the radio again. The static hissed, and a faint whisper came through. Next time, don't answer. The road stretched before me, empty, dark, silent. But above, I knew, somewhere it was already climbing.